Good morning, everybody. Good morning, kids. Good to see you all. Glad everybody could make it today. And for those of you online, hello. Hopefully you can come in person sometime, but also glad you're with us, however you're with us. So we start by singing together. So if you're comfortable, would you rise or stand and let's sing.
Oh
sound beautiful. It's always good to hear you singing with us. And yes, you can have a seat.
Good morning. That was a drawn-out one. Good job, kids. It is so good to be with you on this beautiful Minnesota January morning. I'm assuming since you're all in the seats, you made it through our skating rink of a parking lot. Congratulations. My name's Jeremy. I'm the pastor here at the Grove, Cottage Grove. And like I said, it's so good to be with you, whether you are in the room with us or watching with us online. I know we've got people who are traveling or not feeling well. Both of those options are legitimate. We are a brand new church that exists to grow goodness, and so we hope that every interaction that you have with us, whether you are in the room with us, whether you are watching with us online, whether you're interacting with us throughout the week, is nurturing healing, wholeness, and beauty in your life, just through coming in contact with us. As you walked in this morning, hopefully you received one of these worship handouts. I'm going to be referring to a few different things that's in here. If you did not get one, they are on the back table. First of all, if you open it up, this has some of the most important information that you need to know about the Grove, why we exist, our values, how to give, all of that good stuff. There is then also one of these handouts, or one of these inserts. An insert is an opportunity for you to let us know that you're here, to update any contact information, or to request some sort of follow-up. So, for instance, if you are interested in some specific thing that we are doing as a church, you can indicate that on the back. If you are interested in a follow-up conversation, you can schedule that on here as well. If you have a prayer request, you can submit that on here, and we can join you in praying over whatever the thing is that you are praying about. Or you can indicate something very specific that you're interested in that has to do with our back boxes. So if you take your hand out and flip it to the back, these are the three most important things to know about this month. These are the things that we're placing emphasis on or wanting specific actions about. The first one is Beautiful Mess. So this is the series that we are currently in, where we're looking at heroic stories of imperfect faith in the Bible. But then also, as a part of that, every single week we're having someone who's a part of our congregation to share their own story of messy faith. We're going to be talking about this much more as we go through the morning, but we had such a good reaction to last week, our very first week in this series, that we are actually extending this series another 3 weeks. So what that means is we get to hear more of these crazy stories from the Bible about messy faith. We get to hear more stories from people in our congregation as well. If you are interested in sharing your own story, why don't you write on the insert on the back, there's not a box for it, but maybe write story, and then you can drop it in the offering basket in the back on your way out, and we will follow up with you. We still have slots to fill for people sharing their stories of messy faith. We would love to help you to tell your story. Second box is Pajama Ball. Pajama Ball is coming up on February 10th. We clear out all of the pews in here, move them out to the sides, and we turn this into a dance hall where kids and grown-ups alike get to come either in their pajamas or dressed up as superheroes or as some sort of royalty. And it is a night of music and dancing and crafts and food. It's going to be a blast. That takes a lot of people to be able to pull it off. So not only do we let you know about it in advance so that you can plan for it, you can invite other people to it, but if you are interested in volunteering for the event, we would love some extra hands. So that can include anything from you're on the dance floor helping lead all that stuff to you show up early and you set up, you show up later and you clean up, and you have to have no interaction with the craziness and all the kids running around. If you are interested in any of those things, getting involved in some capacity, helping to pull off that event, you can indicate it, again, on the insert. If you check, what do we want to check? Community events. Otherwise, you can go to the link that's right there on the back and sign up on that link, and then we will follow up with you. Trust me, we need those extra hands to be able to pull off the event. And then the last thing is becoming a partner. As we begin this new year, again, we are re-upping the offer to say, we would love if you consider this to be your church home, to acknowledge that this is your church home. And next month, if you want to mark your calendars, the second Sunday of February, I can't remember what the date is, we are going to be having another partner gathering for those who are interested in learning more about the Grove and what it might mean to be a partner. So if you want to kind of peg that or put that into your calendars as something, if you're interested in learning more about the Grove or learning more about becoming a partner. Okay, the last thing that we hit on every single week is how important kids are to this church. Kids are vital, celebrated members of the Grove. We don't just say that, but we believe it, and we do our best to live into it. A few different things that means. That we have literally built into our worship center a spot where kids can move around and play. So if they're getting a little fidgety and they need to move their bodies a bit, there are some activities over there for them to be able to participate in. In the back of the pews, there are coloring sheets. Adults, you are welcome to participate in these as well if you would benefit from that, but that is an option for them. We have a nursery that's right out there. It is a staffed nursery where if you have little ones, 6 weeks to 4 years old, they can go in the nursery. If you want to bring your kids in there yourselves and don't want to miss out on what's going on in the service, we have the live stream running in there. And then lastly, we have Grove Kids, which is available for our kids who are ages 4 through 5th grade. They will leave just a little bit later in the service to be able to go participate in some play-based programming and learning. A couple notes with that. One, if this is the first time that they will have attended Grove Kids, we would love for you to fill out this registration card, which is also in the back of the pews, so that we can have all the information about them, the most important things like, medical concerns or allergies. And then also if we need to contact you during the service, we can do that. The other thing which I will note for all parents of all kids who will be going out into Grove Kids, we need your kids to have name tags on. That's increasingly important as we get more kids. We want to make sure that we are addressing them as they need to be addressed. So if in a few minutes when we do our connection point, if you know that your kid does not have a name tag, if you could go and get them a name tag so that when they go out for Grove Kids in a few minutes, they have one on them, that would be excellent. Our volunteers would very much appreciate that. The last thing about kids is that we are doing communion today. The kids will be coming back into the service in order to do communion along with us. Okay, I think I hit all the announcements. So now we get to move into what we call connection point. This is an opportunity for you to stand up and find somebody next to you that you don't know or don't know very well. Jeremy's ducking out. I'm calling him out. He's like, I'm out of here. Not at this point. There was an article I read this last week that basically lifted up like the importance of these types of forced conversations. They're like really important for relationship building. And as a new church, relationship building is super important because we're all new at this. So we force you to do this every single week. We do give you a little bit of a prompt though. So this week's question is directly tied to our theme for the day. What is something you've done that you did not think you could do? What is something that you've taken on and you're like, I don't think I can accomplish this, and then you just went out and did it? It could be something big. It could be big. It could be something funny. However you want to answer this question. So why don't you stand up, find somebody next to you that you don't know or don't know very well, introduce yourself, discuss this question, and we'll reconvene in a couple minutes.
All right, 30 more seconds, and then we'll sing the kids out in just a sec. All right, it's time to sing the kids out. Kids, you can head outside. Well, not outside, sorry. In the back, not outside. Jesus loves the little children. All the children of the world. Every color, shape, and type, they are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world.
Well, I'm so excited to share with you today as a part of our Beautiful Mess series and the story sharing that's going on. Today we're going to hear from someone who you see a lot, but you don't get to hear from a lot, and that is Tim. Yes, we know him as Tim. And also, we know him, his artist name, he's a music artist as well, and he goes by Tuvok the Word. So today we get to have Tim playing with us on the band, and Tuvok the Word sharing with us one of his original songs today. I'm so excited, not only because it's a totally different music style than what we're used to, and it just adds to the beauty of what is going on here, but also because we get to hear the story behind the song today. And I think I'm going to shut up now and let you tell your story.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I grew up in a very vaguely Pentabaptist, non-denominational background. So I'm going to start this the only way that I know how. First and foremost, giving honor to all glory to God for just waking me up this morning, letting me be here today. I want to thank the pastor, Jeremy, for just allowing me to be here this morning to share. Thank you to Katie and just the rest of the leadership team as well for just allowing me to just be in this space, have this space to share a little bit of my story through both explaining and then also the song. So the song that we're about to do is called Testimony, and which it is fitting. I've always imagined that it would be in a church setting. That would be the first time that I've performed it. So I'm really blessed to be here performing it in this particular space. The song is essentially about how God, I mean, I guess, we've been talking about God showing up in unexpected places. And this song is sharing two stories from my life, both involving life, both involving death. When I was born, I had a very traumatic birth. I almost didn't make it here. My mom almost didn't make it here. I was born not breathing. I was born without a pulse. I was born having numerous seizures. I had to go to the NICU. I had to do a lot of things. My mom almost didn't make it. And it was just honestly, I know it's a very churchy phrase, but it is honestly by the grace of God that I'm here. And even after I was born, the doctors told my mom and my dad that I probably would have some like mental deficiency, a mental disability. I would not be able to do what I'm doing right now. I would possibly, I would have cerebral palsy. I would have a lot of intellectual disabilities. Like I wouldn't be able to do this, is what they were told. And throughout my life, you know, I've been told that I wouldn't be able to do fill in the blank thing over and over again. And the second part of this song is about my older sister who passed away when we were teenagers. She died of a heart condition that no one knew she had. It's called myocarditis, by the way, so I encourage everyone, if you haven't ever had your heart looked at, an EKG, please, please, please do that. I don't care what age you are, please do that. It's one of the only ways to know if you have this condition, from my understanding. But she unexpectedly passed away. We woke up one morning, she was gone. And that's also what this song is about, is God showing up within that same morning for me. It's one of the moments where there are a few moments in my life where I very clearly heard the voice of God. And it was in that morning where God just let me know that he let me know that she was with him. That he has her, that I don't need to be afraid or concerned about where Amanda is, and that was one of the few moments in my life where I very clearly, tangibly felt the presence and comfort of God. And at the time, I was dealing with a lot of heavy form of depression and suicidal thoughts, and just dealing with a lot mentally before Amanda passed. And then God just knew that would be too much for me to handle, and so just put that on pause, at least for a while, and allowed me to grieve without also experiencing that battle somehow. And so that's what this song is about. It's about the grace of God showing up anywhere and everywhere, even when you don't ask for it. So, thank you. Yeah, that's. Ooh, this song is called Testimony. And also, I wanted everyone to be able to follow along as well. So I made sure to send the lyrics to Katie, so they'll be up. It's a very simple chorus, so if you kind of get the vibe, the feeling of it, feel free to sing along. It's a very, as close to a traditional gospel song as I've ever written, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. I was born in the coldest storm we've ever seen, but God gave me a warm heart cause he lives irony. He made me in my mother's womb and I almost died, so that could have been an early tomb, but my mama cried out to God, let out Shabbat. He kept me safe, he is her rock, but when delivery day came, things became strange. I almost didn't make it, but my mama didn't stray from praying over me. She was busy dispatching angels, speaking in languages only heaven can translate them. That's why I pray, cause I remember where I came from. Family full of faith when the doctors couldn't save Tim. I was born not breathing, now my diaphragm is dangerous. You would not believe the brain condition I was made with. That is why I'm speaking into mics, singing praises, giving God the glory, cause nobody else can take it, my God.
No weapon gon' work, 'cause my God is real, and my God is stronger than anything.
Hey.
No weapon gon' work, 'cause my God is real,
Hey.
and my God is stronger than anything.
Stronger than anything.
Than anything.
Yeah.
Than anything. My God is stronger than anything.
Hey.
Than anything. Than anything.
Hey.
My God is stronger than anything.
When I was 17 years old, my older sister died. We didn't understand the reason, guess it left us mystified. She was my best friend, I never told her, didn't realize until it was the end and it was over. God took me aside and told me that he had her in his arms. I shouldn't be surprised. Amanda lived her life down at the altar. She was proselytized, her presence here was prophesied. She was just an angel with the darker side. Through her death, I learned that we all have a time that God has designated on this earth, no time for suicide. Because I was created with some worth, my work will not subside. Say congratulations to myself because my mind survived. Will be intimidated by depression, no, I won't comply. Yes, I can feel his presence manifesting. Not alone this time, he will never leave me. God has made me in his own design. That's why I'm never giving up on me. I am called and I'm chosen. God gave me this talent, he gave me the words I've spoken, my God.
No weapon gon' work, 'cause my God is real, and my God is stronger than anything. No weapon gon' work,
Hey,
'cause my God is real,
my God.
and my God is stronger than anything.
Hey,
Than anything. Than anything. My God is stronger
Than anything in this life.
than anything.
hey,
Than
anything.
anything.
Yeah.
Than anything. My God is stronger than
No weapon.
anything.
Yeah,
No weapon gon' work,
yeah.
'cause my God is real.
My God is real.
My God is stronger than anything.
Stronger than
No
depression.
weapon gon' work,
Stronger than
'cause
suicide.
my God is real.
Stronger than self-doubt.
And my God is stronger than anything. Than anything. Than anything. My God is stronger than anything. Than anything. Than anything. My God is stronger than anything.
Thank you.
Someone said encore. I agree. Yes, amazing. Tim, thank you so much for allowing us to play with you and sing with you. And it's an honor for us to play on your song. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for trusting us with that. Appreciate you.
So I mentioned that we are continuing this series another 5 weeks now. And what that means, Katie, is we have 5 more weeks for you to get the service order right. So I don't have to follow this stuff and try to, not that it's a competition, but like I got to come up after that and try to engage your attention. Thank you, Tim. That was amazing. So like I said, we are in this series, second week of this series, which we're calling Beautiful Mess, and the subtitle is Heroic Stories of Imperfect Faith. And the imagery that we want you to imagine as we go through this series is that of the Japanese art of kintsugi. Kintsugi is this pottery artwork that says the fractures in a piece of pottery are an important part of its story. We do a disservice when we try to polish them over and make it look like nothing bad has ever happened. And so like these pieces of Japanese artwork, our lives and our lives of faith are often broken, often like have cracks in them, and we're saying throughout this series, what if instead of ignoring those things, instead of like trying to gloss them over, we said, what if those cracks could instead become highlights? And in order to do this, what we're doing is including telling the stories from people who are part of our congregation. The idea for this series came from the book of Hebrews, and specifically one chapter in the book of Hebrews, which is one of the books that we have in our Bible. Like I said last week too, Hebrews is a weird book. We don't know who the author is actually, but we know who the recipients are. The people that the letter to the Hebrews was written to were people who had become followers of Jesus, but weren't so certain that they wanted to do that any longer. For many different reasons, including just the heaviness and difficulty of life and of faith, they were considering going back to their old way of doing things. So this letter is like an announcement to them. Listen, Jesus is as good as you think he is. If God looks like Jesus, then God is pretty good, and you ought to not go back to that old way of doing things. Actually, you should believe that God is as good as Jesus, and you should keep leaning into this. And this is, in fact, how good Jesus is. And so finally, by the 11th chapter of Hebrews, the author goes into this long list of people who were heroes of the faith. And the point of this is not to say these people were so great, they were so much better than everybody else, but actually the exact opposite of that. So the chapter opens with these two verses. Now faith is being sure of what we hope for, being convinced of what we do not see, for by it the people of old received God's commendation. The people of old. Remember those people? Remember those stories? Remember these big heroes that we all learned about growing up? Remember these amazing stories of faith that we learned growing up? The point of those stories, the point of those heroes, why they're being brought up now is not to say they're so good, they're so much better than everybody else, they're so polished. It's the exact opposite. We look at their stories, we look at their lives, we look at their heroism because they were full of cracks, because they were imperfect. Because they leaned in anyways, they embraced a faith in something that was bigger and more important than themselves. That is why we remember them. That is why we continue to tell their stories. That is why we try to live in the types of faithful ways that they lived as well. So as he's going through this list of these different heroes, it's almost as if the author of Hebrews is going big or going home. He brings out all of the biggest names, all of the biggest stories. He's constructing this Mount Rushmore of faith. Last week we talked about Abraham and Sarah, and this week we transition into talking about Moses. You've probably heard of Moses before. Moses is, again, one of the biggest characters in the entire Bible. But in case you haven't heard of Moses, or even if you need a little bit of a refresher, again, here's a little bit of his backstory. Moses was born in Egypt while the people of Israel, at this time known as the Hebrews, were slaves in Egypt. However, due to some circumstances that I'm not going to fully get into, he ends up being raised within the household of Pharaoh himself. Rather than being out with the slaves, he gets raised in Pharaoh's household. As he grows up, there's finally this event that happens in his life where he sees an Egyptian who is physically assaulting a Hebrew. This is jarring to him. He sees this injustice happening. He can't let it stand. And so he intervenes. He ends up killing the Egyptian, which is not going to be great for him. He hides the body, and then he literally takes for the hills. So he goes out into the hills where he's going to find a new life. He finds a wife, and he takes on this new calling, which is fit for a hero. What does he do? He becomes a shepherd. He starts taking care of sheep. This is where he's going to live the rest of his life in relative silence, far away from Egypt and all the consequences that might come from that. Well, God isn't satisfied with that, and at the same time, God is like, well, he's pretty good at herding. Maybe instead of herding sheep, he could herd cats, also known as the Hebrew people, trying to rein them in. Maybe Moses can do this, and so God suddenly shows up in the middle of, he shows up in a burning bush, which is super weird. I'd encourage you to read the story. We'll get into a little bit of the story here. But he interrupts where Moses is at in order to give him this vision for what Moses might be able to do going forward. And this is how that interaction goes. The Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. I have come down to deliver them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up from that land to a land that is both good and spacious, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the region of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now indeed the cry of the Israelites has come to me, and I have also seen how severely the Egyptians oppress them. So now, go, and I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, or that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt? God replied, surely I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that I have sent you. When you bring the people out of Egypt, and you and they will serve God at this mountain. Moses said to God, if I go to the Israelites and tell them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What should I say to them? God said to Moses, I am that I am. And he said, you must say this to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, you must say this to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, and the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial from generation to generation. Moses answered again, and if they do not believe me or pay attention to me, but say, the Lord has not appeared to you, then Moses said to the Lord, O my Lord, I am not an eloquent man, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant, for I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. The Lord said to him, you gave a mouth to man? Who gave a mouth to man? Or who makes a person mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? So now go, I will be with your mouth and will teach you what you must say. But Moses said, oh my Lord. Just bring it like, oh my Lord, please send someone else whom you wish to send. I jumped around in this a little bit just to kind of like lay on the heaviness of this back and forth conversation. So God shows up in this bush and says, Moses, I am calling you to do this thing, and I'm going to give you what you need to do this thing. And Moses time and time again goes, ain't no way I can do that. I cannot do that. Find someone else. Yes, you can. No, I can't. I cannot do that. I am not the person you are looking for. You must be looking for something or someone else. Oh my Lord, you got to find somebody else, right? This is one of the biggest heroes of our faith. This is one of the biggest and most important stories of our faith, and yet it came a razor's edge away from being lost to history. Why? Not because Moses was incapable of doing this thing, but because Moses believed he was incapable of doing this thing. He told himself a story about himself that said, this cannot be true of me. And he wrote himself off in the process. We often think about the stories that we tell or that we share or that we even consume in very binary terms. We talk about true stories and untrue stories. Or maybe we talk about nonfiction and we talk about fiction. But if you think about it, every single one of our stories is actually fiction, including the stories that we tell about ourselves. So this is the way that our brain works. Even as we sit here in this room, there's so much going on in this room that we are not able to fully take in. Lights and sounds and all sorts of different inputs, smells, tastes even. We go through our lives getting hit with millions of different things. We have hundreds, thousands, millions of different experiences across our lives. Interactions that we have, decisions that we make, things that happen to us. We cannot adequately process what all of that means. And so in order to figure out in order to make meaning of our lives, we construct stories. There are things that happen to us, decisions that we make, interactions that we have, where we hold them up and say, oh, actually, these are the most important things of which we're going to construct this thing that we call our life and our story. We put them together in order to make meaning so that we can better understand where we've come from, where we're at now, and where we can go from here. And in many respects, that's really good and really helpful because it does help us to better understand what has happened to us, where we're at now, and how we can step into the future that's out in front of us. And yet also, often, these stories that we tell ourselves are limiting. They box us in and like help to define our future beyond what we can fully embrace and even imagine for ourselves. Moses had this story that he told himself, and we have these stories that we tell ourselves that go something like, oh, this is me, this thing cannot be me, this is how I have always done things, that means I cannot do this going forward because that does not fit with the story about myself that I know. This experience and that reasoning, that story that we tell ourselves about is this thing called imposter syndrome. How many of you have heard of imposter syndrome? Yeah, most of you have heard of imposter syndrome. More and more these days, we're talking about imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is this feeling that we have this story, it is true of us, and there's this other chapter, though, that does not fit within our story. And maybe we are the only ones that don't have that chapter. It's the feeling of being in a room and thinking that you don't belong, and maybe you're the only one who doesn't belong, and you don't want to let anybody else know that you're the only one that doesn't belong. There's actually this movement within psychology to change the name of this experience from imposter syndrome to something more like imposterism or imposter phenomenon, because the fact is almost everyone experiences it. So even the idea of calling it syndrome is too limiting. It is that feeling of saying, I have this story, there is this chapter that does not fit, and maybe I'm the only one whose chapter does not fit. I come bearing good news. If all of us have this experience, if it is in fact imposterism or imposter phenomenon instead of imposter syndrome, what that means is you're not the only one. You're not the only one. We all experience it. We all deal with it. And what's more than that, we have agency in changing our story. We have agency in which chapters get included and which ones do not get included. There's this thing in Alcoholics Anonymous called opposite action. Have any of you ever heard of this before? So the idea of opposite action is that there is this natural action that maybe you think is a given for yourself, this thing that you are resolved to do, that you have to do because this is who you are. And then there's an opposite action that you can take. So if you are an alcoholic, well, I drink, I'm drawn to alcohol, an opposite action is to not do that thing. We have many different things where we can say, oh, this is how my life is defined, this is how my story goes, and we have an opportunity to change our story and take an opposite action. Sometimes this is the idea of faking it till you make it. Actually, it is making it till you make it. You just do the thing until it becomes true of you. You do the thing that someone without imposter syndrome would do until you realize you're not an imposter and you never have been. Moses had this story that he told himself. I am inadequate. I cannot do this leadership thing. And yet he did. He made it till he made it. He took that opposite action, and he ends up rewriting his story and rewriting history in the process. You would be shocked by the number of conversations that I have with people where they think they are the only ones. They're the only ones that don't fit. They're the only ones who don't have all of the answers. They're the only ones for whom this whole life in general, but this life of faith, this whole following Jesus thing, they're the only ones for whom it's really difficult and hard to come by. They're the only ones who have these doubts and are unsure how to get through everyday life. I say you'd be shocked because every single person that I tell, you're not the only one, is shocked that they're not the only one. I come bearing good news. Again, you are not the only one. We are a community of people where we can come in, hopefully every single week, every single Sunday, and say, we are not alone, you are not alone. We are in this thing together, even and especially when things get messy, even and especially when things get difficult, even and especially when the cracks start showing. The author of Hebrews, in the very next chapter after this whole list of the heroes of faith, puts it this way, Hebrews 12. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, we must get rid of every weight and the sin that clings so closely and run with endurance the race set out for us, keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set out for him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. Think of him who has endured such opposition against himself by sinners, so that you may not grow weary in your souls and give up. I've heard this passage so many times, and yet one of the things that stuck out to me this time was about an endurance race. I talked before about how I've picked up running in the last year, and I've gotten to the point where I've done enough training, and I do enough training on a regular basis. I actually consider myself an endurance athlete. But there's a couple things that I've learned about being an endurance athlete and being a runner over the last few months. Number one, you know how you become a runner? You run. If you, no, you do stop. Eventually you stop. To be a runner, what do? You run. There is no special gear you have to have in order to be a runner. There is no distance you have to go in order to be a runner. There is no speed at which you have to move to be a runner. If you run, you are a runner. If you get out of your house and you run 10 meters, you are a runner. You can be a runner. So that's number one. It doesn't take all of these special things to be a runner. You can be a runner by simply running. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to endurance athletes in particular, you're not alone. You don't have to be alone. When you go long distances over a long period of time and do it regularly, there's certain things that happen to your body. And I'm going to put it really gently here, folks. There's a couple things that started happening to my body as I started running more miles more often. One had to do with intestinal distress, and another something that was going on with my feet. I'm like, this is super weird. This is super messy in some capacities. Is there something wrong with me? All I had to do was reach out to other people that I know who do similar sports and then do a quick Google search to realize this is not just me. This is a normal thing. I'm not in it on my own. I'm not an imposter. This is something that comes with it. Endurance sports and endurance athletes are messy. And yet, we're like in it together. It is no different for the life of faith. The life of faith is messy. And often we think we must be the only ones. We must be the only ones that don't belong. And yet my encouragement for you today, my encouragement for us is to believe that it is possible that you are not the only ones, that we are in this together. And so the challenge for me, for you, for us is what is that opposite action that you can take to live into this? How can you make it till you make it in this whole thing that is the messiness of faith? How can you embrace knowing that you are loved, you are guided, and you are never alone just as you are? Well, one of the ways that we do that as a faith community is we do this thing called communion or the Lord's Supper. In some capacities, this is a retelling, see if I can get this right, a retelling of Jesus' retelling of the story that Moses was living out. In his final moments with his closest followers, Jesus gathered in a room for a meal. It was a meal celebrating the Passover, this time when Moses helped to lead God's people out of slavery in Egypt into freedom in their own land. And yet Jesus, as he looked around this table at this group of misfits who didn't fit in a lot of different rooms, didn't seem to fit together, may have all of themselves felt like imposters, offered them this table, offered them this ritual as an opposite action. You believe this about yourself, but here's now what I need you to understand. So as he was gathering with them for this meal, he took this piece of bread and he broke it and said, "Imagine this is my body, which is broken for you. Do this as often as you eat it in remembrance of me." Then after the meal, he took a cup of wine and said, imagine this is my blood of the new covenant poured out for you. Do this as often as you drink it in as remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and you drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes again. Here is this tangible action that you take and can take over and over and over again that can rewrite your story, rewrite our story, let us know that we are all belong and we all are welcome. So in just a few moments, I will invite you up here to participate in this. There will be a station at each aisle. We'll have you come down and we'll say a quick blessing over you, and then you can receive one of these cups. There's 2 different layers on it, so you can remove the first layer, and there is a gluten-free wafer. So if you are gluten-free, you don't need to worry about that. You are welcome to participate in this. And then the second layer will get you to the grape juice. Again, this is grape juice, not wine. So if you are in recovery, you are able to participate as well. You can bring them back to your seats and consume them there. Everyone is included in this. None of you are imposters. All of you belong. All of us belong. You do not have to have it all figured out. You do not have to be without doubts. You do not have to be a member of this church. You do not have to be a grown-up. One of the best ways to experience the goodness of God, the grace of God, is to experience it. And so in this moment, may you take this opposite action that says that you do belong, that you are loved, that you are a part of something bigger than yourself. That even when you can't believe in yourself, God believes in you. So with that, I'll invite Miranda to come up and then invite you to come forward and partake.
I could just sit and wait for all your goodness, hope to feel your presence. I could just stay right where I am and hope to feel you, hope to feel something within. I could hold on to who I am and never let you change me from the inside. I could be safe, I could be safe here in your arms and never leave you, never let these walls down. But you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord, where you lead me. You lead me, Lord. I could hold on to who I am and never let you change me from the inside. I could be safe, I could be safe here in your arms and never leave. Never let these walls down. You have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you lead me, Lord. You have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You lead me. You lead me, Lord. I will be yours, oh, I will be yours for all my life. I will be yours, oh, I will be yours for all my life. I will be yours, oh, I will be yours for all my life. So let your mercy, I will be yours, oh, I will be yours for all my life. So let your mercy light the path before me. 'Cause you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. 'Cause you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You lead me. You lead me, Lord. You lead me. You lead me, Lord. God, thank you for always guiding us in all the ways that you do. Whether it's a word, like a voice in our minds, or just a feeling that we get in our gut, or something around us that feels something akin to a sign. These things that are urging us forward to go beyond our comfort zone, beyond our self-doubt, to do good work in the world and to do the healing work within ourselves. However we connect with you in that way, help us continue to be attuned to that and to be bold and courageous in moving forward, and to not let us hold ourselves back from doing good things in the world and creating that with you. Thank you for guiding us as always. We love you. Amen.
Well, once again, it was so good to be with you. I hope that as you hear these things, as you hear the stories like Tim's and Miranda's last week, as you hear these stories of imperfect heroes like Abraham and Sarah and Moses, you start hearing some of your own story in there as well. And realize that even and especially in those times when you feel like, I must be the only one, I must be the only one who doesn't belong, that you truly do find this to be a community of faith where you belong, where we all belong. Just a quick note before we leave. Tomorrow, of course, is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And in these times, we find it especially important to be stepping into the ongoing work of anti-racism. Now, it could be the fact that this church in its history, the United Methodist Church as a whole, the United States Church as a whole, this church you specifically might be like, well, that has not been my identity before. This whole idea of engaging in anti-racism, that hasn't been a part of my story. And yet, maybe this is an opportunity for us, to take some of that opposite action and to be intentional about making this a chapter in our story. This ongoing work of what it means for us to be people in the world, to be followers of Jesus in the world, to be a church in the world. And so as we go, I'm actually going to have us say a benediction together. This is actually from Martin Luther King Jr., called A Prayer for the Church. And so as we go, I will have you stand as you are able, extend your hands as you are able. And then up here on the slide behind me, we have Martin Luther King Jr. Prayer for the Church. So as we go, will you join me in this prayer? Lord, we thank you for your church founded upon your word that challenges us to do more than sing and pray, but go out and work as though the very answer to our prayers depended on us and not upon you. Help us to realize that humanity was created to shine like the stars and live on through all eternity. Keep us, we pray, in perfect peace. Help us to walk together, pray together, sing together, and live together until that day when all God's children of every color will rejoice in one common band of humanity. In the reign of our Lord and of our God, we pray. Amen.